morning with the sun down, shining in. Found my mind in a round paper bag then. Tripped on a cloud and fell 8 miles high. Tore my mind on a jagged sky. Dropped in to see what condition my condition was in. Yeah, yeah, oh yeah, what condition my condition was.
Good evening, Martin County. How are you? Treasure Coast, Stewart, Palm City, everybody. This is the Martin County Business Exchange Wednesday night show. This is John Campion, your co-host,
Right.
with big world famous Frank Mezzapel.
Stop it. And Kenny Rogers in the first edition.
Yeah, right.
We led off with Kenny. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Was that the song you referred to today?
Yes.
It was, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if you know, we have a fantastic guest today, one of my favorite people in our group. It's Greg Paskey with Paskey Consulting. Greg
A lot of thought went into the name of your business, didn't it, Greg?
Took me days and days to come up with that. So.
Yeah, I used to be JWC Inc. on my license plate. You know,
Nice.
yeah, I was back a long time ago when I didn't even know who I was or where I was. That's when I didn't know what condition my condition was in. But anyways, Greg is
segue.
joining us tonight. He was our speaker today at our wonderful breakfast, and you know, the guy, like our president John Magnan said when we were introducing him, he's got more abbreviations after his name for all his.
Yeah.
Oh, you know, I was going to try to come up with a word I could make out of all that stuff, Greg.
Wouldn't that be neat? And I understand it. And John said that Greg had actually dropped off about a half a dozen of your...
He was embellishing it a little bit.
But there were a few probably not listed.
He forgot to center them on the page.
Oh, is that what it was?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, absolutely.
It must be, maybe my ears are plugged from swimming in the pool. That's okay. I don't need to hear myself. It's bad enough. I talk to myself because nobody wants to listen to me. That's the way it is at home now.
Well, you know, your new young lady that works in your shop. I called her up the other day, and did she tell you what happened? She stumbled over the intro, you know, and I chortled a little bit, and I said to her, I says, what you have to do is say the same thing I say. And she said, well, what's that? I said, well, I got my tongue in front of my eye tooth, and I couldn't see what I was saying.
Oh, that got her.
Right. She loved it.
She comes back and gives me notes, and she goes, there's, Frank, radio, something. I don't, okay.
I got it. Yeah.
But anyways, well, Greg, welcome.
Well, thank you, John.
You've, I guess what we could say is my biggest compliment, and I didn't come here to give him compliments because Greg's a parrot head. He knows how to have a good time.
Yes, I do.
And guys from Erie, PA, it's a special breed. This winter we had a lot of fun talking about what was going up there. I think one day I said, Greg, you're not up in Erie, are you? And he's like, no, but my daughter is.
And I have a brother and two sisters that still live there. So.
Well, and they haven't. Well, they don't want to come down here.
Well, they come down here to visit, but they
sure they do. Yeah. Sure they do, and they expect you to take care of them.
But our daughter's thinking about relocating.
Okay,
so
good.
That could happen.
Well, one of our top hires a few years ago, I may have talked about it, but she's from. I think I've talked to you about it. Is Lake Togawanga? What's it called up there?
Tonawanda.
I can never say it. And Melissa, I know you're not listening because she lives in Vero. I don't think she gets it up there, nor does she probably have AM radio on her or whatever. But Melissa was one of the best hires we ever had. And what happened is she came walking into our Stewart store one time and was looking for a manager. And she talked to Ken, my right-hand guy that a lot of people know. And she said, I'm looking for a job in kitchen and bath. Do you have any openings? And so Ken started talking to her, and it turns out she would come down and visit her cousin in Port St. Lucie every year to get away. single woman, and she'd get away. And then the main reason she decided she wanted to move down here is she said, I get sick of replacing the starter switch on her snowblower.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's one of the best hires we ever made.
Isn't that
And
amazing?
I ended up having to share her with my Vero store. And when they wanted her up there, I said, okay, bag of cash and first round draft pick. And that was 4 years ago. So,
Great.
Well, you raise an interesting point, too. A lot of times with hires, I was a managing partner of a regional CPA firm for many years. And sometimes, you pick somebody and they really worked out well, but sometimes the people you thought were going to be all-stars weren't, and people you just brought in provisionally ended up being marvelous. So
Yep.
there's a little bit of luck that's involved with that.
Well, the cool part that happened there was, when I had to do a little, can I check these references, So she said, yeah. So I called her main boss up there. It could have been her brother for all I know. I mean, best cousin. I don't. But I called the company, get the guy. He goes, you know what? He says, I have, I think he told me he had 175 employees at 9 different plumbing counters and 4 different showrooms. They sold to the builders outside of Buffalo. And she said that she had told me that they never had felt the recession. They were busy up there. But this guy says, she's my number 3 person. He says, and if I could move my business down where you are, I would do it if I had to keep her. So I was like, yeah. So it turned out that way. And, we didn't know.
Yeah.
We had brought her in for the second and third interview. It's a good thing we didn't screw around any longer, So, but thank you, Melissa. And I just call her M.
Yeah.
She's got, she's kind of like from.
M, like from James Bond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. 'Cause she's in charge up there.
Yeah.
I never want to be on the wrong side of her. She doesn't ever call me James or, James, where are you? So, anyways. So Greg, give us a little, history of your background, because you're in the really good part of your life here where you're, kind of getting ready to not necessarily hang up your skates, but the way that you share yourself with the business group. And, it's always nice to know that when you're at breakfast and we know you're going to give us some philosophical things to think about, and some of the things that you do for our group and for other people out there, because you're always kind of, I got to go away. So,
thank you, John. I mean, my mantra has always been to have a lot of fun and get a lot done.
I like that.
And I'm getting a little older now, a little longer in the tooth, and been blessed by life experiences, and focus a lot now on even giving back. Whether it's facilitating, the CEO group that we have, voluntarily. I love doing that. Okay, so I'll tell you what. It all started on a cold winter's night in North Tonawanda, New York.
Seriously?
That's where I was born.
Wow.
And I'll tell you how tough my mother was. Okay.
How tough was she?
Well, it was
That's good,
January 26, 1948, okay? And it was snowing so bad in Buffalo, taxis weren't running, buses weren't running. And my mother and dad, they lived about 8 blocks from the hospital. My mother walked to the hospital. I had to walk across a field that had about 2.5 foot of snow to walk in to deliver me. So she was a tough.
She was on a
tough
mission.
cookie.
Yeah.
Well, she was an incredible person, but that's how it all started. Okay.
So on the way to the hospital, she goes, I think my water froze.
There you go. And then when I was growing up, I always said my father was really in the retail business, or my family was in the witness protection program, because we moved all the time, And then I happened to end up in Erie, Pennsylvania, met the love of my life. We got married in 1969. I always say there were 3 events that happened. Man landed on the moon,
Right.
Woodstock, and Jan and I got married. Okay. And then we moved to Pittsburgh, where I went to grad school, and I worked for one of the large CPA firms down there. And then I was CFO of a multi-state airline back in the 70s, which was a really great experience. Then we moved back to Erie to raise our girls, okay? And so I was blessed to have 3 other partners, and we developed a firm that had about 15 to 17 people at its peak. And then for the last 20 years now, I've been doing my own gig, 15 of which has been down here. So Florida's been great, but Erie was wonderful. I've enjoyed every place I've ever been and every place I've ever worked. Okay, I tend to look at the positive things in life, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful is the way I like to express it. So.
Well, you always have a great attitude, and we can tell that you. I'm kind of sorry I didn't hang out with you in your younger days. We might been wondering what the condition we're in. What I was kind of getting. I remember now, you and I have birthdays are very close because I'm January 27th.
Ooh, there you go.
1957. I was born in a raging snowstorm in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
There you go.
And there's 2 events that happened in the year that I was born, maybe 3, but I can only remember 2. Yeah. Actually, there was 3, but 2 happened to a different person. I was born. Yeah. Hank Aaron, you'll like this, Frank.
Hammer and Hank, yeah.
Hammer and Hank was in his rookie seasons with Milwaukee, and he was paid $100,000 a year, and they won the World Series.
Wow, that was big money. Big money.
100,000, 1957, Hank Aaron. So, we always talk our baseball, and that's the truth. So, not only did he win Rookie of the Year, and they won the World Series, and I was born. So there's 3 events, one that was insignificant.
What, Hank's
No,
performance?
it's a big one to decide on, but very cool.
Yeah, the Tigers didn't hit the 3 digits on the payroll till Al Kaline
There
and
you
Willie
go.
Horton. So that was like 10 years later
crazy.
after Hank Aaron. So
That sounds funny. 10 years later, geez, I was only, oh, man.
Yeah. So, I mean, think about that. It's amazing.
And then was that the year that Gibson and Longborg played against each other in the World Series? There was a big series with the Cardinals and the Boston, I thought. Am I wrong with that?
I would have thought it might have been later, but
maybe.
But
I have to Google it.
Sorry, I didn't mean to digress from your.
we do that.
Greg, we're done talking about your life. No, Frank and I are gonna. No, we're gonna. So now I'm kind of curious too. You may have told us this before. So can I ask what the airline was that you were?
Well, it was just a
just a
public.
local-
Excuse me, we just privately owned.
Oh,
okay?
a privately owned.
Just
that
called
company.
Keystone Aeronautics and
Okay.
Keystone Aircraft Sales.
That would be
was,
cool.
Yeah, it was fun. Everybody in the company was real young. Okay, the CEO had just turned 30. Okay, most of the key players were in their 20s. We had one guy who ran our maintenance operation in a couple different locations. Ralph was 42. We thought he was Methuselah.
The old guy over there.
The old guy. 42.
But we learned a lot, but we didn't make any money. So that was.
Well, that's it's the Earth School, man. Why not just piss it away with an airline problem? Can I say that?
No, too late.
Okay, I apologize, Carol. I apologize. So, so what was your? So what that had to be a very. And how many years did you do that?
Just for 2.
Okay. So, what do you think was the most interesting project that you've worked on or worked with that you really? I mean, that might be a hard question to ask you because you've done so many different things.
Well, it's quite a few years later, but I think again it was just such a great learning experience. It was a little bit of a heady thing again. I was like 24, 25 at the time. Okay, and we had aircraft sales operations in 3 different states. So we sold a plane to Roy Clark. Okay, the country singer.
Mm-hmm.
We had a plane on lease with a sitting senator in Texas. So there was just a lot of sometimes celebrities that we flew in a couple of our Learjets. So it was just a real interesting kind of job for the age that I was. It was just fascinating to be around.
And you get to hop on those jets every once in a while.
Every once in a while.
Yeah, that's always cool. That's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah. So, but again, that was a small sliver of my life, but one that was very interesting.
So related to your what I would call your consulting business, which is kind of, I mean, when you came down here 15 years ago, what brought you down here?
Well, like a lot of folks that end up relocating to Florida, it was a family situation. My father-in-law, who it was my best bet to make it to 100, okay, passed away suddenly. And my mother-in-law, who had been fairly ill, and we always thought she would go first, didn't. So it was either have mom kind of come back up with us to Erie, or move down, and we were toying around with it. So we moved down. So, and my mother-in-law, who was the most wonderful woman on the planet, she was with us about another 2.5 years.
Okay.
But
and then wasn't too hard to figure out. This isn't so bad.
Well, it isn't, and thank goodness, like technology today is such that you can be remote. My biggest clients are still up north. Okay, so it's again a case where the technology lends itself. So I remember one conversation I was having with a colleague of mine who was in Erie, and we were having conversations periodically with a woman who was in Vancouver. Okay, and the three of you are just having a conversation. You're sharing computers, just like you're sitting next door, and that's amazing. It's a nice leverage tool to use in your business these days.
So you moved here in what, 2002?
Yes.
Yeah, I moved here right at the end of 2002, and of course came down because my parents were here.
Okay.
And I never thought I'd live in Florida at all. It's like when I tell people I moved here from Nashville, they go, "Why?" I said, "Well, there's reasons." So, but what a wonderful place. Oh, yeah. And like we always tell each other, we don't try to tell too many people. Don't want it to be, here comes Miami. Sorry, folks, nothing against it, but we are in a really, really great situation. Greg made a mention earlier about his CEO group that we formed through a few of the members suggesting it, and Greg agreed to facilitate it. Yeah, and this is a something that selected group people. It's outside of our regular meetings, and we meet twice a month. And it's kind of great because what happens there stays there. It's not Las Vegas. It's Stewart. But Greg shares a lot of exercises and discussions, and there's 6 to 8 of us to 10 of us in this group. And for me, I've just how many years have we been doing that?
3 now.
Gosh. It's just really helped not only get to know some of our members better. These are all business owners, and we share stuff with each other. And, I sensed a lot in our group that a lot of people don't like to share stuff.
Right.
But when you get into this situation, the walls kind of go
It's an
up.
intimate setting.
It is.
Yeah.
And we get to understand, of course, business owners out there who may be listening, you always like to have somebody you can run something, by.
Right.
And sometimes you don't want to get in too deep, but if you want
you
to share it, you do. And if you don't, it becomes very interesting. And I know that you kind of enjoy listening to that banter or that feedback or how we talk to each other.
Well, you do. The cross-coaching that goes on between the members is always fun to watch, okay? And the other thing you realize that no matter if, whatever business you happen to be in, whether you happen to be a radio station, whether you happen to be a kitchen and bathroom.
A retail mogul.
Well, but whatever it is, a lot of the problems small businesses deal with are common, okay? It doesn't matter across which industry, and they're very common problems. And so you can develop a rapport and you can kind of run things by your colleagues, and the joint learning experience, and everybody has war stories and lessons that they've learned. And when you share those, we have a little bit longer time to do it than we do typically at our Wednesday meetings. So you get to explore topics a little bit more and to help each other more. And it's just a fun process.
Well, you made some great comments today about small business and businesses with a small amount of people. I don't have my notes that I took. I think I left them on my placemat. But
There it is.
it was the fact that where was this? Well, you made the one comment now, I remind our people of that. I said, we can make the decision what we're going to do about this right now. We don't have to wait for the board of directors or, get the executive committee together. We are it. Right. So let's make that decision and go.
Yeah, I think that's the exciting dynamic when you're an independent individual private business. You can turn on a dime, you can look at an issue, and you can make a command decision. And if it's not the right decision, make another one real quick and fix it.
Frank, I couldn't have said it better.
That was good.
That was correct.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. There's downsides and challenges to being a small business, but there's some very good pluses too.
Right.
And you just enumerated several of them. So.
Cool.
It's one of the things we had a gentleman in today who had been a customer of ours probably since mom and dad opened the store 25 years ago at the airport. And he was saying, you've been here that long. He says, you must really be taking care of the people who walk in here, because the only way you can be around that long is by taking care of your customers.
Right.
And I said, hey, I said, when I tell my, when people come to that front door, it's like being at my house. They're coming here because they need something, whether it's, if they need to find out where can they get their knives sharpened, fine. We'll figure it out down the street, Western Wear behind there, or whatever. I mean, that's what we've found ourselves many times.
Well, John, you hit a very important part. One of the advantages of being a small business is it's relationship based. Okay, you're establishing typically, hopefully, lifelong relationships with your customers. So they buy from you now, and you've treated them well, and they're going to come back again. It's more than just a transaction; it's a relationship, and again, that's what you've done. Okay.
Yeah, and you can, and it's nice when you have people who understand that and feel that. At one point today, we had 3 of our desks where the salespeople were filled with people, and everybody was laughing. We were having a good time, and I said, "Well, we just want you to feel." Well, we couldn't feel any more welcome here, and so that makes you feel good. I mean, I cut a few stupid joke pun things, and one lady said to Jennifer, one of my salespeople, "Does he do this every day?" And she goes, "Well, that's kind of a new one." And I said, "Well, my wife told me I have to find a new audience, but
You have to work on new material.
yeah, I do." So, Frank has to hear it every few weeks. But
I love it.
all these things of with the SWAT, when we're talking about it, people out there, like Greg said, a lot of people have used this in probably in different businesses they may be in, or you can use it for small companies or large companies or small departments or large departments, whatever. But I think the biggest thing is understanding that people are just people, and everything's a relationship.
Right.
And what's nice about our group is I don't think we have any large. We might have a large one with maybe 2 companies where there's a lot of people spread out, because it could be a national company, but we can always feel when we have the owners in there, which is our preference,
Right.
or the primary person involved, really makes a difference in how it works, the club itself. So, are we taking a break?
It's that mystical, magical time once again.
Okay, now you guys can reboot me out the door. All right, this is the Martin County Business Exchange Wednesday show. We are going to take a short break. It's John Campion with co-hosting with Frank Mezzapel and our guest Greg Paskey from Paskey Consulting. We'll be right back.
And now it's time for today's Southeast AgNet Report, brought to you by Everglades Farm Equipment, a family-owned business for the past 50 years with 10 Florida locations, including Okeechobee, Waxahachie, and Fort Pierce. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
And now,
Hey, Rocky, watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat.
again,
Nothing up my sleeve. Presto!
Ronnie.
I take a 7.5.
Now here's something we hope you'll really like.
Thank you, Rocky.
You do that pretty well.
I know. I practice all the time when I'm by myself. It's welcome back to the McBiz.us, mcbe.org, the Martin County Business Exchange, and the theme for. You know what that is, Greg?
F Troop.
F Troop.
Yeah.
F Troop, yeah.
Yeah, that's in honor of Larry Storch, now being about 94 years old. But
Oh, yeah.
Frank dug that up one time, and it was Larry's 90th birthday. We've talked about it so many times on here. One day he's playing it, and I'm trying to figure out, is it rawhide? Is it,
I'm just waiting for Larry Storch to call me up and say, will you stop
Yeah,
playing that
stop
song?
it. I'm 94. I did break my hip. The show was only on 2 years. Leave me alone.
That was a wacky show. I enjoyed it. Yeah.
Oh, it was great. It was great. And it was only on 2 years because they lost their
Yeah.
sponsor.
They lost the sponsor.
yeah, 'cause he was hurt.
He was. Whoop.
What can I
You
say?
just never know, the
Well,
fortunes of business.
I have this file folder I keep from the executive group, and
It's pretty jammed up. You got a lot of
I
stuff
am.
in
It's Greg feeds it, and you go, oh yeah, I'm gonna. Anyways, there's everybody's bonus from 14. Okay, so that was a bad year. No, it was a good year. But anyways, we have why don't you talk to us about? Let me find mine. Here it is. The one-page mini assessment.
Yeah, this is interesting. This is, again, I like short, simple, and sweet kind of tools. And this is one that we use with our group that we meet, we meet with on 2 different Thursdays a month. About once a quarter, we do a very simple exercise. And basically, it's a way to kind of evaluate how your progress is going during the year. So the first question basically is, well, what's working in your business, okay? What's going well? what makes you get up in the morning and smile. There's got to be one or two things that are clicking, okay? So you want to identify those and just share those with the group. And then the second one isn't as much fun to talk about, but that's what's not working, okay? What's causing you problems, and again, what's just not in sync, and the things that drive you crazy from day in and day out. And we share these as a group, again, just so that you start to see some common ground, you know. Some things are similar to working, but it's a way then for each of the members to say, okay, am I on track or am I not? And then the third question we ask were, what are the lessons that you've learned? Okay? And, you know, experiences are life lessons. So if something's not working and you learn from it, typically you got a lesson and you can maybe apply that in a way that's going to move you again further on down the road. And the lessons learned as we share those, again, those are little nuggets that somebody might see something someone else has and say, boy, you know, I learned that lesson 3 years ago. Here's what might even help you get better at that particular thing. It's the sharing. And then the fourth thing are the fresh new ideas that you might have to be able to try to redeploy. And like you mentioned earlier, Frank, with one of the things about being a small business, if you try something, you can experiment. If it doesn't work, well, reload and try again, okay? And that is one big benefit, you know, that a lot of times small businesses don't think about. You can be an experimental lab, okay? And you don't have to undergo a huge study just to try something and see if it works. You know, if you have, in a retail business, John, if you have all of your customers' emails, you can put out a little promotion and it doesn't really cost you anything because it's all email. And if something seems to click, then you can maybe expand on it. But those are nice things. So that's a quarterly exercise we do that seems to get a lot of traction with the different members in the group, and everybody seems to enjoy the process. So.
Yeah, that's an amazing exercise. I just dug one out that I did in 2016, and it looks like a Christmas tree. It's very colorful.
It is.
And but you know, when you're sitting in there and you're thinking about it, and I take it back and I review it, and pull a few things out of there and share them with a few of my employees. And yeah, you know, I like to empower my employees, and you don't want to give them too much information. And then sometimes you give them too much information and they think that they're the authority, but they don't, you know, I mean, there's a reason why I am where I am, besides just being lucky. I paid for the company. They didn't give it to me. I want you to know that. Okay?
Yeah.
So, but, you know, in all reality, you talk about past experiences, and that's the whole thing. Right. I mean, I've been through the corporate ringer. I've spent many a time on the planes and in the hotels, and
yeah.
you know, the stupid meetings or the long meetings or the required. We just have all done it. You know, I'm preaching to the choir here, and so I guess that's all what shapes the inner thing in that little 25-pound dude we have hanging out between our ears. Well, mine's about 18. Mine's like a stegosaurus. It'll be okay. But for me, it's been very helpful. And probably one of the biggest things, you know, I told Greg, I was kind of afraid to tell him, but I ended up personally graduating out of, not graduating, but extending outside of our CEO group into a real CEO, you know, one that is a national type company with people, you know, it's from going, honestly, from the training, the minor leagues to, you know, ninth inning with the Yankees playing the Red Sox, and they bring me into, I'm the closer and I got to get this dude out. But I learned so much from our group and was able to take that in. And to me, I love coming to our session that we have twice a week with you. It's just really helpful for me.
Well, John, you know, the larger groups, you know, I've been a educational resource with several of them, and I've had a lot of articles I've had published with some of them. But yeah, they have much more time to do that, and they're really wonderful. You know, I've been a big fan of CEO groups for almost 30 years now, okay? And what we do with ours is just kind of almost CEO light, okay? You know, we have more time than we have normally in our Wednesday meetings, since we still only have about 3 hours a month, but at least the intent's the same way. and you're not the only one. We have another member in our club, in our CEO group who belongs to a national one as well. Okay, and you can also find those CEO groups within industries, and they're all beneficial. Okay, so again, I'm a big fan of whatever shape or form that education goes on.
Well, it's just to the master procrastinators of the world, which is the male species. One of the big things that I personally wanted to improve on was being accountable for what I say I'm going to do and when I'm going to do it by. And I'm still working on it, but I'm getting a lot of help, and I've got some tools to help me do it. So that is my deal because of what, the plans I have for the next, 3 to 10 years, let's say, with the business, my personal life, everything. So, you want to, when you have a nice company, a good company, and you realize it, I'm starting to realize that more and more, but, you can never let your guard down. You can never make an assumption that, things are great.
Right.
We're dealing with the outside forces of everybody wants it yesterday, and I don't care what business you're in. It's crazy, and it's made the people crazy. It's a crazy world out there, and
Well, it can be fun as well.
it can be. But when you're dealing with, I guess I deal with it on a different basis. But it's all in the phone. The people, go ahead.
You hit I think the nail on the head there. I mean, basically the next level of success has to have the next level of discipline.
Okay.
And you mentioned accountability. Okay, that to me is the Achilles heel of small business owners. Okay, you've heard me talk about this before, but this is really passionate about me. Small business owners love to hold their people accountable, but they have a tough time holding themselves accountable. They don't have to report to a board of directors, okay, like national companies do. And whether they instill discipline in their practice, either with a lot of good financial information, a lot of good operating metrics, a lot of budget and comparisons, industry stuff, if all that happens, they're the ones who are going to allow that. And very often, it's something they'd rather not do, okay? So they basically sometimes the biggest limit to making progress is self-imposed. Okay.
Okay.
And so what you're doing there by making yourself vulnerable, kind of making a commitment and having somebody hold you accountable is a big, big step in growth. Okay.
Yeah, and
See, you're doing a good job.
I'm trying. Boy, am I tired when I go home. No, actually, I will say that when we run into a situation, I used to have one of my market managers when I worked for Frankie calling on McDonald's. His name was Perry Brown. I don't mind putting his name out there. Young guy down in South Florida at the time, from Oklahoma. And Perry was an installer for us, installing McDonald's kitchens, and then he became a market manager, calling on the regional offices and out there with the owners. And Perry, when he would call, he'd go, "John, I got a situation here." Oh my God, I used to hate hearing that. So what I learned was with my company, Greg, and this is the way I've always felt, when somebody screws up, don't put blame on them. And then I'll, many times, if I have to call a customer, I say as the owner and CEO of this company, if we failed you and did wrong, I really apologize. It's my fault. I am accountable for that, and I don't have a problem taking a bullet there.
Well, John, again, that's a very good trade, and we'll talk about that when we get back from break.
Oh, good. Thank you, Greg. That is really good.
Yeah, he's good at this.
Hey, so this is John Campion, your co-host with Frank Mezzapel. We'll be back with our guest today, Greg Paskey from Paskey Consulting, Martin County Business Exchange, Wednesday show. Hopefully you understood that. We'll be right back. Thank you. What? No Margaritaville? We got the King Parrot here.
All right. I'll see what I can pull out for you. All right.
We got Greg Paskey. This is John Campion with Frank Mezzapel on the Martin County Business Exchange Show. Greg, you didn't go to Woodstock, did you?
No, unfortunately not. But
The guy who works for me in my Vero store, he showed us the poster where he's like in the front.
okay.
Yeah, he was there.
Either that or he photoshops pretty well.
He might have. He was like,
Yeah.
yeah, this is Jerry with his. He's still bald. Yeah, he was bald in 17 years old.
Wow, really?
Well, he can't. Yeah, I don't know. He might have been. If he photoshopped himself in there. I love it. I didn't mean to digress there. How do you do that so fast, Frank? You are.
Look down on people who work.
Some days are better than others.
Oh, wonderful.
You may never get home now.
Yeah, a little Margaritaville for you as we.
You know, I don't know if
Work
I
our
told
way
you
home.
this, Greg, but when I lived in Nashville, one of the guys had in my neighborhood. You know, it was an okay neighborhood, but my neighbor was good friends with the guy who was the drummer for Jimmy. And my friend, my neighbor Joe, he used to get a big mug and put Jack Daniels and Coke in there and walk while the kids pulled the kids in the wagon. And I had this long insulated tube that you could put like 8 beers in. And I carried that over my shoulder. And we lived in a very hilly neighborhood. Well, the guy from Jimmy Buffett, the cheap son of a gun, he brought nothing ever in 5 years. So I can't say what I called him, but, you know, I guess either Jimmy wasn't paying him enough.
Well, in every group there are doers and there are takers.
Yeah, well, he was a TT, big time. But anyways, it's okay. It doesn't affect what's going on because Jimmy Buffett's a great guy.
Yeah.
So,
Well, right before the break, John, you had mentioned that you try to use everything as a learning experience with your employees, and you also mentioned if you're talking to the customer, you'll take the blame, okay? And that's a classic thing of leadership. I remember us meeting a banker about 5 or 6 years ago, and I really, really liked this guy a lot. He was his methodology was perfect, okay? He gave credit away all the time, okay? So if somebody started at the bank that day and they went out with him on a sales call and they landed the business, if he came back, he would applaud and give a real big kudos to the young man or young woman who just went out with him. But if anything went wrong, he took the blame, and as a result, his employees would have taken a bullet for this guy. Okay,
nice.
He was very supportive. Okay, and again, you don't often see that, but it carries big dividends if you do it day in and day out. So.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than you have to say to somebody, well, they're new and they didn't know, or no, and that's kind of the exercise I went through today in part of the training process is understanding. And people are spending money and they want a certain thing, and sometimes they don't make themselves clear, and the last thing you want to do is do the wrong thing,
right.
Order the wrong part, and that's it happens with everybody, and because we're working with humans. And I always say, yeah, it's tough. Kind of stinks sometimes. It's made by a human. Here we are. So, hey, remember you were up in Detroit, and you and your son Scott went to see the cars getting made.
Yeah, we went to the River Rouge factory there at Ford and in Dearborn.
And all the robots.
Yeah, watching the robots. There are still people that work on the floor of the plant. But amazing watching those Ford F-150 trucks rolling off this.
One every 12 seconds or something?
One complete truck a minute.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
you're talking crazy money for these things.
I never asked, were the employees wearing hairnets or
No.
shower
No.
caps? Okay.
No.
Just wondered. How about the robots?
No
Okay.
no shower
Right.
caps on the
All right.
robots.
All
yeah.
right. Just,
And on the opposite end, Lamborghinis are still basically handmade the way I understand them. So.
That's right.
Yeah, and so there's an interesting process there. Several years ago, Ford bought Jaguar, which is a British company, and Jaguar was losing money. Their interior, they were basically hand built. They put a lot of hours in building the cars. And Ford, when they bought it, they brought in the Ford mindset, redid the whole plant. and made it more efficient, and they fixed a lot of the production problems that Jaguar was having. It's mostly with electronics, and they found a way to modularize it, and and still utilizing the team that they had, but they just gave it Ford power.
Ford power. So do you actually say it Jaguar or Jaguar?
Jaguar.
Okay.
If you're from Detroit, it's Jaguar.
If you're
but-
from if you're from Palm Beach, you say Jaguar.
Jaguar.
Yeah.
Yeah. But and then they sold it, and I guess made money. But
Yeah. Greg,
Interesting.
if I can ask you, Frank and I, we banter like this all
Yeah,
the time.
yeah.
It's ridiculous. But
That's why people tune in all the time.
oh, sure, yeah. Remember last night on the last night the phone rang and I was so excited and Frank's
it was
like,
the
yeah,
wrong number."
hello, oh, wrong number. Okay, I was so excited. I finally got a phone call. One of the things we talk about, or at least particularly from my side, we say that we've talked about the fact that 90-something% of the businesses in America are small businesses. And of course, that can vary from 100 people down to one. What do you see coming down the pike? I mean, I know you're not the optimistic economist that we know so well in our group, but as a business consultant and master of your domain, is what do you see coming down the road for, say, I don't know, retail or businesses with things happening out there with, one of the things we talked about today was businesses buying more, buying businesses and getting bigger.
Right.
We see that huge
So is there what John is asking, is there tea leaf reading that you can do for us?
Thanks,
Well,
Frank.
soothsaying.
No, that's good. That's good.
Well,
that-
certainly the consolidation risk is something that's out there. The larger competitors just have so many economies of scale. It's generally going to be more and more difficult to own and sustain your own business. I think that's kind of a given. So you've got to be able to utilize a lot of the tools that the big guys have and employ it at a smaller level to gain some kind of competitive advantage. And that's going to cause some challenges, but business as usual for small businesses is not going to cut
business unusual.
it. Yeah, it's not going to cut it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, a lot of times, like we don't have, you have these cart websites where you can buy stuff.
Yeah.
People want to go to our website. I don't have a cart, I know at some point I'm going to have to be on there with something,
Yeah.
and whether that's another portion of our business
Yeah.
or what.
I think you're right.
And that's a tough one because, boy, that can be pricey. At the same time, there are other tools out there to minimize that, I suppose.
yeah, and sometimes companies just have to be a little creative in how you go after it. I remember running into a printer company down in Miami, and they were originally from Toronto. Okay, a big company. Okay, and instead of lamenting people being able to buy stuff over the internet, they carved out a small segment of their business that just catered to that,
Okay.
and they took advantage of both aspects of it. Okay? If they book something, they can produce something and get it down from Canada in order to be able to satisfy a customer. So they looked at competition in a little different way,
Sure.
and tried to learn from what they could from
So
it.
they were niche and they kept it niche, kind of just
Yes.
formulating that. And I think that's the thing that, we think about that. But I just know that that's something that is going to have to happen to kind of stick around.
Well, yeah, and Amazon's obviously a very, very big challenge. They.
I got them.
But they are a big reality check, and
Yeah.
and Jeff Bezos, I think the way he phrases it is that your margin is my opportunity. So he's always looking at ways to provide a service at a lower cost, and they're in there. That's a challenge.
That's what we're dealing with out there. I always ask the people in our industry, particularly kitchen and bath. It's a huge industry, as you may imagine. And I think I made the statement a few weeks ago that 58% of the people out there, of us, are at one point going to be remodeling or doing something to our bathrooms or kitchen, whether it's a faucet or a toilet or a remodel. 58%. That is amazing. That's almost half the population.
More than half, yeah.
Yeah, where are you guys? You're going to the wrong. You turn left at 197 Monterey Road. Okay, so but what we got like a minute left, Frank?
Just about.
Okay, well I just want to say, Greg, it's been great having you on the show. Greg Paskey, if you do you want people to call you?
Sure.
Sure, John.
Yeah, they just go to paskeyconsulting.com. They can find out how to contact me if they so choose.
You have to learn how to spell Paskey first. But it's got an H in it.
I bet you if
you can Google it.
You can Google it, it'll come up.
He will. He will. Playing a guitar or hanging out at the Parrot Heads. Greg, it's been great having you here.
Thanks,
and,
John.
I really appreciate everything you've done for myself, my business, and all the people in our Martin County Business Exchange group.
Thank you too, Frank. I appreciate being here.
Yeah.
That's why he's world famous, Greg.
Give Greg a call, and you can find out how your condition is.
Yeah, well, he's a wonderful person, and again, thank you so much. It's the Martin County Business Exchange. What are you ending up here with?
Kenny Rogers in the first edition.
Hard to believe that people don't know that, do they?
Before Kenny went country.
Before Kenny went country. Before he started selling chicken. Hey, everybody have a great week. We'll talk to you next week. The Martin County Business Exchange Wednesday show. We're gone. Bye.
Well.